You're sitting at a bar with your buddies, third beer in, and someone drops the question that makes everyone lean in a little closer. When do women actually want it the most? And suddenly, every guy has a theory, every guy has a story, but nobody really knows because we're all operating on assumptions, wishful thinking, and that one article we read 5 years ago. Well, let me crack this code for you, and I promise you, the answer isn't what you've been told, it's not what the movies show you, and it's definitely not what your ego wants to hear. I stumbled into this truth completely by accident. I was 34, recently divorced, licking my wounds and trying to figure out where everything went wrong. Started dating again, and you know what shocked me. The women who were pursuing me, and I mean aggressively pursuing me, weren't the 20-somethings I expected to be invisible to. They were women in their 40s, some pushing 50, and they came at me with an intensity that made my ex-wife's entire decade of lukewarm interest look like a bad joke. These women knew exactly what they wanted, when they wanted it, how they wanted it, and they weren't playing any games about it. Let me tell you what nobody tells you about female desire, and pay attention because this will flip everything you think you know on its head. That sweet young thing you married at 25? She doesn't even know what her body is capable of yet. She's still figuring out the instruction manual, still worried about how she looks with the lights on, still performing what she thinks desire should look like, based on romantic comedies and romance novels. But that 45-year-old divorcee who just sent you that text at midnight? Brother, she's operating on a completely different frequency, and if you're not prepared for it, she'll eat you alive. Here's what happens, and I've seen this pattern so many times it's like watching the same movie on repeat. Women hit their sexual prime not when their bodies are youngest and firmest, but when their minds finally get out of the way. All that insecurity, all that people-pleasing, all that, what will he think if I do this garbage that young women carry around like a backpack full of rocks? Somewhere around 40, they dump that backpack in the trash and suddenly discover what their bodies have been trying to tell them all along. I remember this conversation with a woman I was seeing. She was 43, divorced, 2 kids in college. We're lying in bed after what I can only describe as a religious experience, and she starts laughing. I ask her what's funny, and she says, if someone had told me at 25 that I'd be having the best sex of my life in my 40s with a younger man, I would have called them insane. I didn't even know my body could do what it just did. I didn't know I could want something that much. And then she said something that stuck with me. I wasted 20 years having polite sex when I could have been having this. You see, there's this myth we've all bought into that women's sexuality is like a car that starts depreciating the moment it rolls off the lot. 25 is the peak, 30 is the decline, 40 is the wasteland. What absolute horseshit. What actually happens is that women's sexuality is like a fine wine that needs time to develop its full complexity, to reach its true potential, to stop giving a damn about what the label says and start caring about how it actually tastes. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part that will mess with your head. It's not just about age, it's about what happens at different ages. A 30-year-old woman with 3 kids under 5? She doesn't want sex, she wants sleep. Her body might be younger, but her life is exhausting her into numbness. She's touched out from kids hanging on her all day. She's stressed about mortgage payments and school applications. She's so deep in mom mode that remembering she's a sexual being feels like remembering she used to speak French in high school. Theoretically possible, but practically irrelevant. But fast forward 15 years. Kids are teenagers, self-sufficient, maybe even out of the house. She's established in her career or comfortable with her choices. She's not exhausted from nursing babies or chasing toddlers. Suddenly, she has energy again, time again, mental space again. And guess what fills that space? All that suppressed desire, all those fantasies she's been pushing down for years, all that sexuality that's been on the back burner suddenly comes roaring to the front like a force of nature. I've talked to dozens of women about this, and the pattern is so consistent it's almost eerie. They all say variations of the same thing. I thought I was broken in my 30s. I thought maybe I just wasn't a sexual person. Then I hit 40-something, and it's like someone flipped a switch. I want it more now than I did at 20, but the difference is I know what I want and I'm not afraid to ask for it. And that's the key difference that men need to understand. A 25-year-old might have sex with you because she thinks she should, because it's Saturday night, because she doesn't want you to be upset, because that's what girlfriends do. A 45-year-old has sex with you because she actively wants to, because her body's demanding it, Because she's finally learned to prioritize her own pleasure over your ego. That's a completely different energy. And if you've never experienced it, you're missing out on what female desire actually looks like when it's not filtered through insecurity and obligation. Let me paint you a picture of how this plays out in real life. Young women, and I'm talking 20s and early 30s, they're still performing sexuality. They're worried about their stomach, about weird noises, about what you'll think if they're too aggressive or not aggressive enough. They're having sex from outside their bodies, watching themselves like they're in a movie, judging their performance, wondering if they're doing it right. It's sex as anxiety, sex as performance review, sex as relationship maintenance. But women in their 40s and 50s, they're not performing anything. They're inside their bodies, fully present, taking what they want, giving what they choose to give. They're not worried about their stretch marks because they've earned them. They're not concerned about being too loud because they have learnt their pleasure matters. They're not thinking about anything except the sensation, the connection, the raw physical experience of it. That's the difference between sex as performance and sex as genuine desire. Now here's something that will blow your mind about timing and opportunity. Young women have the opportunity but not always the desire. They're physically capable, socially available, but mentally elsewhere. Older women have the desire but not always the opportunity. They want it, their bodies are screaming for it, but society has told them they're past their expiration date, men their age are chasing younger women, and the whole dating market treats them like they should be grateful for any attention at all. I knew this woman, 47, absolutely stunning, successful, intelligent, everything you could want in a partner. She told me she hadn't had sex in 3 years. Not because she didn't want it, she wanted it desperately, but because men her age wanted younger women, and younger men didn't think she was an option. She was invisible in this sexual no man's land, burning with desire but with nowhere to direct it. When we finally got together, it was like being with someone who'd been starving and was finally offered a feast. The intensity was almost scary. But here's the brutal truth about female desire that nobody wants to admit. It's not just about age, it's about the man she's with. A woman can be at her supposed peak age and feel nothing if she's with a man who doesn't ignite something in her. Conversely, a woman in her 60s can feel like a teenager again with the right partner. Female desire isn't a simple graph with age on one axis and horniness on the other. It's a complex interaction of hormones, life circumstances, emotional connection, and whether the man in question actually knows what the hell he's doing. I've seen this repeatedly in my own life, and in the lives of men around me. Guy marries his college sweetheart, they have kids, life gets busy, sex becomes a scheduled Tuesday night obligation if it happens at all. He assumes her sex drive is dead, that this is just what happens in marriage. Then she leaves him for a personal trainer or a co-worker, or some random guy she met at a coffee shop, and suddenly she's having more sex than she did in college. The sex drive wasn't dead, it was in a coma induced by boredom, routine, and a partner who stopped seeing her as a sexual being. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, perimenopause and menopause. Every man thinks this is when female sexuality dies, when the shop closes for good, when sex becomes something that used to happen. Dead wrong, dead fucking wrong. What happens during this time is that women's hormones go absolutely haywire, and for many women this creates a surge in desire that makes their 20s look like a nunnery. They're not worried about getting pregnant anymore. Their hormones are spiking unpredictably, and there's this biological urgency, this now, or never feeling that can make them absolutely ravenous. I dated a woman going through perimenopause, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it nearly killed me. She wanted it morning, noon, and night. She'd wake me up at 3 a.m. ready to go. She'd send me texts during work that would make a porn star blush. She told me her body felt like it was on fire, like if she didn't have sex she might actually lose her mind. And this wasn't unique to her. Talk to any honest woman in her mid-40s to early 50s, and she'll tell you similar stories about this surge of almost overwhelming desire. But society doesn't talk about this because it doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative says older women are dried up, sexless, invisible. The narrative says men peak at 18 and women become worthless after 30. The narrative is bullshit designed to sell young women insecurity and older women invisibility. The reality is that many women are having the best sex of their lives in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. They're just not having it with their husbands who stopped trying 15 years ago. Here's what I've learned from all of this, and it's probably the most important thing I'll tell you. Women's sexuality is responsive, not spontaneous. Young women often haven't figured out what they respond to yet. They're still experimenting, still learning, still figuring out what actually works for them versus what they think should work for them. Older women know exactly what they respond to, and if you're not providing it, they're not interested. But if you are providing it, if you're hitting those triggers they've identified over decades of experience, the response is volcanic. A 45-year-old woman who knows her body, knows her triggers, knows what she wants, and has found someone who can provide it? That's not a sexual partner. That's a force of nature. She's not lying there wondering if her thighs look fat. She's not performing pleasure she doesn't feel. She's not having sex because it's been 2 weeks and she feels guilty. She's having sex because every cell in her body is demanding it, because the desire is so strong it's almost painful, because she's finally learned that her pleasure matters as much as yours. But here's the tragedy, and it really is a tragedy. Most men are completely unprepared for this. They spend their 20s and 30s thinking they're God's gift to women, that their young wives' tepid response is just how women are, that sex is something women tolerate rather than crave. Then they hit their 40s, maybe get divorced, and suddenly encounter women their own age who actually want sex, who actively pursue it, who know exactly what they want and aren't shy about demanding it. And these men are terrified. They run back to younger women who will pretend to be satisfied with their mediocre performance, rather than face the reality of a woman who actually knows what good sex looks like. I've watched so many of my friends do this. Get divorced, immediately start dating 25-year-olds, bragging about their young girlfriends. Meanwhile, their ex-wives are having mind-blowing sex with men who appreciate what a sexually confident woman brings to the table. These guys think they're winning, but they're actually retreating to the kiddie pool because they're scared of swimming in the ocean. The other factor nobody talks about is how women's relationship with their own bodies changes with this age. Young women are often at war with their bodies, seeing them as projects to be improved, problems to be solved, sources of shame to be hidden. Older women have often made peace with their bodies, learned to appreciate them for what they can do rather than how they look, discovered that pleasure is more important than perfection. This shift is revolutionary for female sexuality. When you stop worrying about how you look during sex, you can finally focus on how you feel, and that's when things get really interesting. I remember this moment with a woman in her late 40s. She was getting undressed, and I noticed she wasn't doing that thing younger women do where they try to hide their bodies, suck in their stomachs, angle themselves in flattering ways. She just took her clothes off like it was the most natural thing in the world, completely comfortable in her skin. When I commented on it, she laughed and said, "Honey, I spent 30 years hating this body. I'm done with that. This body has given me children, survived illness, carried me through life. If you don't like what you see, there's the door. But if you're staying, you're going to appreciate every inch of it." That confidence, that ownership of her sexuality was intoxicating. But here's what men need to understand, and this is crucial. Women's desire at any age is killed by certain things, and age often determines what those things are. For young women, it's often insecurity, exhaustion from small children, the mental load of running a household. For older women, it's being made to feel invisible, being compared to younger women, having partners who've stopped putting in effort. A woman in her 40s or 50s who's made to feel desired, appreciated, seen. Her sexuality will blow your mind. The same woman made to feel like she should be grateful for any attention, she'll shut down completely. The window of opportunity is also different. Young women might have the time and energy but not the desire or knowledge. Women in their 30s might have the knowledge but not the time or energy. Women in their 40s and beyond often have all three: the desire, the knowledge, and finally the time and energy. But society tells them they're too old. Men their age are looking elsewhere, and they're supposed to gracefully fade into sexlessness. It's a criminal waste of sexual potential. I'll tell you about the most sexually intense relationship I ever had. She was 46, I was 38. She knew exactly what she wanted, when she wanted it, how she wanted it. She wasn't playing games, wasn't trying to trap me into marriage, wasn't using sex as a bargaining chip. She wanted sex because she enjoyed it, because her body craved it, because she had reached an age where she understood that life is short and pleasure is important. The lack of agenda, the pure desire for physical connection and pleasure, was liberating in a way I'd never experienced before. But it wasn't just about the physical. She had this emotional intelligence about sex that younger women often lack. She understood that sometimes sex is about connection, sometimes it's about release, sometimes it's about play, sometimes it's about comfort. She could read the mood, adapt to what was needed, communicate without awkwardness. There was no performance anxiety because she wasn't performing, she was just being, and that authenticity was more attractive than any 20-year-old body could ever be. Now let me address something controversial but true. The whole cougar phenomenon isn't about older women preying on younger men. It's about women finally reaching an age where they're comfortable pursuing what they want, and younger men being less threatened by that than men their own age. A 45-year-old woman who knows what she wants sexually is terrifying to a 45-year-old man who's been coasting on mediocrity for 20 years. But to a 30-year-old man who's confident in his abilities, that's not terrifying, that's exciting. There's another aspect to this that men completely miss: the freedom that comes with experience. A woman in her 20s is often still figuring out birth control, worried about reputation, concerned about what her friends will think, navigating the complex social dynamics of young adult sexuality. She's got roommates, she's worried about noise, she's scheduling sex around her menstrual cycle like it's a business meeting. A woman in her 40s, she's got her own place, she knows her body's rhythms like a familiar song, she's beyond caring what anyone thinks about her sex life. That freedom translates into an uninhibited approach to pleasure that younger women simply can't access yet. I learned this lesson viscerally when I dated two women back to back, one 26, one 44. The 26-year-old was gorgeous, objectively more physically attractive, but the sex was like a rehearsed play. She had moves she'd learned from magazines, positions she'd seen in porn, a script she was following. The 44-year-old? She threw out the script entirely. Every encounter was different, spontaneous, driven by what we both wanted in that exact moment. She'd suggest things I'd never thought of, not because she read about them, but because she'd lived long enough to know what she actually enjoyed. The saddest thing I see is women in their 40s and 50s who've been convinced they're past their sexual prime, that they should be grateful for any attention, that their desires are embarrassing or inappropriate. They're sitting on this volcano of sexuality, this wealth of experience and desire, and they've been told to keep it hidden, to act their age, to accept that their time has passed. Meanwhile, they're probably having the strongest sexual desires of their lives. Their bodies are capable of pleasures they didn't even know existed at 25, and they're being told to pack it all away like winter clothes. Here's what I want every man reading this to understand. If you're married to a woman in her 40s or 50s and your sex life is dead, it's not because she doesn't want sex. It's because she doesn't want sex with you the way you're currently offering it. You're probably still treating her like the 25-year-old you married, not recognizing that she's evolved. Her desires have changed, her body has changed, what works for her has changed. You're playing a song she's tired of hearing while she's craving something completely different. The woman who was satisfied with 5 minutes of missionary position at 25 because she didn't know any better? At 45, she knows exactly what she's missing, and your lazy routine isn't cutting it anymore. She needs you to see her as she is now, not as she was then. She needs you to appreciate the sexual being she's become, not mourn the girl she used to be. She needs you to match her energy, her knowledge, her desire, not expect her to shrink back down to your comfort level. And if you're single and dating, stop chasing 20-somethings who don't know what they want and start appreciating women who do. Yes, her body might not look like a Victoria's Secret model, but her sexuality is fully developed, fully realized, fully available if you're man enough to handle it. She's not going to pretend you're amazing if you're not. She's not going to fake anything to protect your ego. But if you can actually deliver, if you can meet her where she is, the experience will make every 20-something you've been with look like a rehearsal for the real show. The truth about when women want sex the most isn't a simple age number. It's when life circumstances, self-knowledge, hormonal changes, and opportunity align. For many women, that's in their 40s and 50s. They've raised their kids, found their confidence, stopped caring about judgment, and their bodies are demanding satisfaction with an urgency that would shock their younger selves. They're not the desperate housewives of male fantasy. They're fully realized sexual beings who know exactly what they want and aren't afraid to take it. The question isn't when women want sex the most. The question is whether men are prepared to handle women who actually want sex, who pursue it actively, who know what good sex looks like and won't settle for less. Because that 23-year-old who seems so eager, she might be acting. That 45-year-old who seems disinterested, she might be waiting for someone who can actually satisfy the volcano of desire she's sitting on. Stop believing the cultural lies about female sexuality declining with age. Stop assuming that youth equals desire. Stop running from women who actually know what they want because it threatens your ego. The best sex of your life might be with someone society tells you is past her prime, but who's actually just hitting her stride. Open your eyes, challenge your assumptions, and you might discover that everything you thought you knew about when women want sex was completely, utterly wrong.